Hey everybody, it's Mr. Enoch here. I'm going to be giving you guys our video lesson for Thursday, April 17th. Thank you guys for all the work you've been doing so far. So Thursday, April 17th, we're going to be talking about suspense. Suspense is a literary element that creates a sense of uncertainty in the reader or the audience. It's kind of the basis for a lot of horror, basis for a lot of thrillers and fear. So I thought it would be really great for us to look at that today. So our directions. One, read the directions. I always put that up there. I don't know why, but that's always first direction. Then you need to read the Monkey Paw summary. This is a story you guys might be familiar with, might not be. Then I need you to do the Monkey's Paw close read, and then answer the suspense written response, which is your assignment for today. And then if you have some extra time and you want to keep working, because for some of you it might seem like, well, this isn't enough work, like I want to do some more stuff with English, I have an extension activity folder here that you can look at later. So let's look at the Monkey's Paw summary. This one's a little bit longer than yesterday. It's a really good story. When you hear it, you're going to know it exactly. So here's the TLDR summary. Be careful what you wish for. A family makes a wish on a magical monkey's paw, and trouble follows. So on a dark and stormy night, don't all great stories start on a dark and stormy night, Mr. and Mrs. White are relaxing with their son, Herbert. Sergeant Major Morris, who's a family friend, comes and visits. He tells the Whites and Herbert about his recent trip to India. The story takes place in London, I believe, so that's where they're sitting in their house. He met a magician who gave him a magical monkey's paw that is governed by fate. Fate is the idea that whatever we are destined to do in life can't change. It's always going to happen. So the paw grants 3 wishes to anyone who uses it. The magician warned Sergeant Morris that it is dangerous to meddle with fate. So when you try to change your fate, bad stuff's going to happen. Sergeant Major Morris witnessed terrible outcomes from the monkey's paw, and he threw it in the fireplace at the Whites. The Whites, curious, decide to grab it before it could be destroyed. Sergeant Major Morris warns them 3 times about the danger, but Mr. White keeps it anyway. So there's that a bit of foreshadowing there that, he's warning him this thing's not great. So when Sergeant Major Morris leaves, the Whites joke about how silly a monkey's paw that grants wishes sounds. They decide a joke to try to monkey paw out. Mr. White wishes for 200 pounds to pay off his house. Not a big wish back then. I think that comes out to like $20,000, which is a lot of money, but not too much. So to everyone's surprise, the monkey's paw moves. Mr. and Mrs. White go to bed, and Herbert puts out the fire. Now their son Herbert, when he puts out the fire, he actually sees an image of a monkey in the flame. The next day, the Whites again joke about the silliness of the monkey's paw. Herbert goes to work. Later that day, a stranger shows up at the Whites' door. He informs Mr. and Mrs. White that Herbert has died in a factory accident. He also tells the Whites that they're going to receive 200 pounds from an insurance settlement for their son's death. Heartbroken, Mrs. White makes Mr. White use a second wish for their son to return to life. Now, if you're thinking the way I am, that's probably not a good idea. Even though he disagrees, he decides to make the wish. Later in the evening, they hear knocking at the door. Mrs. White knows it must be her son, but Mr. White's concerned because their son died. As she runs to open the door, he makes a final wish. When Mr. White goes to see who's at the door, his wife is on the floor crying, and the street is empty. And that's how it ends. So these are our characters. We have Mr. White. He's the husband who's not believing the monkey's paw. He begins by wishing for 200 pounds. We have Mrs. White, the wife, who also doesn't believe, but after their son's death, she makes her husband wish for their son back. Herbert is the son of Mr. and Mrs. White. He dies in an accident after the first wish. And Sergeant Major Morris is a friend who gives the Whites the monkey's paw. So some applicable literary devices here. We have situational irony. So that's when the situation turns out differently than what the audience might expect. So with every wish, there becomes some situational irony in the story. So the idea that they wish for 200 pounds, it's ironic the way they get it. They get it through an insurance settlement through the death of their son, which is not the way anyone would expect to or want to get a gift like that. And then suspense, which is a feeling of uncertainty in the reader. And we're actually going to look at suspense here in part of the story. So I'm actually going to stop the video here, and I'm going to have a second video that goes through the close read of the monkey's paw. That way the videos aren't too long.